Hi plant loving friends, today I'm talking to you about Hoya. We have a huge selection of Hoya in the greenhouse right now, and so I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk to you about this wonderful group of plants. Hoya are primarily epiphytic plants that grow in South Asia and also Australia. There are over 600 species in this group, so there's a lot of variety, but generally you're going to have thick succulent-like leaves in this group, and most of them are drapers. There's a lot of variety in leaf shapes and textures and some variation in color in this group. Hoya are really great houseplants, and they're fairly easy to take care of. They just need a few things. They need bright, indirect light. They need to be watered well and then let to dry out in between waterings. And then you want to make sure that when you're choosing a pot for them, choose a shallow pot with a hole in the bottom. So bright, indirect light means bright light coming through a window, or if you can put them outside for the summer underneath a tree canopy like where I'm standing now, this is a perfect environment for them. Their native environment, they're growing under a tree canopy in the areas and trees where litter has collected, and then they root in that area or into a bark area. And so if you can recreate that when you're choosing a spot for your Hoya, it's going to be a great option. And then when you water, you want to soak them really well until water drains out the bottom, and then don't water them again until they've dried out completely. Hoya do something called Crassulacean acid metabolism, or CAM, which is what succulents do, where they keep their stomates closed during the day to hold onto the moisture while the sun's out during the day, and then they open those stomates at night to reduce the amount of water that is evaporated out of their leaves during the heat of the day. So they like to be watered similar to a succulent. And then once again, when you're choosing a pot for them, shallow pot, and then having a hole in the bottom. At Groovy Plants Ranch, we always recommend you choose a pot with a hole, but for Hoya in particular, a hole is a must. Because they do like to dry down in between waterings, and because they are slow growing, if you don't have that hole in the bottom, it can be hard to know when it's time to water them again. And if you don't have that hole, it can also have some watering issues like root rot. So just save yourself some heartache, choose a pot with a hole when you choose your pot. Hoya have some really great variety in colors and shapes. This is an all-time favorite, Hoya rope vine. And look at that wild foliage. This one is a really beautiful Hoya. It can be overlooked when you have it with all of these other ones. This is just a Hoya australis because it's a little bit less exciting than, say, the rope Hoya, but it is a beautiful plant. It's nice and full, great grower. And this is a variegated version of the australis. This is called Lisa. And this has pink foliage that fades to this limey green and darker green foliage with age. Hoya kerrii is a cool Hoya. It's got these beautiful leaves that are shaped like hearts, and this is a variegated kerrii. And this one's not an amazing specimen because it's a stock plant and we've cut on it recently, but I wanted to show you this one because it's got some nice stems. So Hoya are not going to, will root if you put a leaf in the soil, but if they do not have that node attached to it or a little bit of stem with the leaf, then all you're going to ever get is a rooted leaf. So if you're propagating your Hoya, make sure you have some stem cuttings with it. A lot of times you'll see the kerrii in a grocery store or at a big box store that is just a single leaf in a pot, and you think, oh my gosh, I found the plant I've been looking for and it's so cheap, I'm gonna buy it right now. Which you can absolutely do, but it most likely does not have any node attached to it, and so it will not branch. You will most likely just have a leaf that is rooted in a pot for the lifetime of that plant. And so that's fine if that's what you want. If you want just a cute heart growing out of a pot, go for it. But just so you know, if you see that in a store, you probably are only ever going to get that and not any branching. It is a little bit harder to find the kerrii with branches, so keep an eye out for that when you're purchasing a kerrii. Hoya are really easy and versatile houseplants, which is part of why we love them here at Groovy Plants Ranch. They like bright light, but they don't have to have it to grow. You may have a Hoya in your house and put it in a medium light situation, and although it may not grow a whole lot for you in a medium light situation, it's also going to be fine there. If you've had a Hoya for about 6 months and it hasn't done a whole lot of growing for you, I can almost promise it's because it needs a little bit more light. If you can move it to a brighter area, it'll grow faster for you, but if you can't, that's also okay. They also are very forgiving with watering because they get watered like a succulent. They like to dry out in between waterings. If you let them go for a long time and you forget to water them, or you need to go on a trip and then you come back and they look kind of shriveled, when you water them, they should perk right back up in 24 hours. So they're very versatile as far as watering goes and as far as light goes. They do like some humidity, and they tend to want the humidity in order to really push some new growth and also in order to flower, but they don't have to have humidity. So you can have them in your home and never have a humidifier in that area, and they'll do great for you. But if you put them outside for the summer where it's a little bit more humid, they're going to do a little bit better. Hoya have really interesting flowers. They are star-shaped flowers that grow in a cluster at the end of their branches. So Hoya put out these long branches, and this is how they grow new leaves. And also off of these is where you get a flower. When they flower, they're a little bit elusive as far as flowering goes. Some varieties flower every year, some varieties flower every other year, some only flower when they're getting perfect conditions. But what I have found, and what I know many of my friends have found as well, is that if you're able to put them outside for the summer, hang them under a tree canopy, and let Mother Nature take care of them for the summer, where it's getting that filtered light through trees and it's getting that outdoor humidity and that magical rainwater that has its perfect pH and other minerals in it, that is going to be a great way to jumpstart flowering and also really jumpstart some good growth on your Hoya. And also Hoya need to be mature to flower. So mature tends to mean root bound with a decent amount of foliage. Even if you have all of those things happening outside for the summer, root bound, full in the pot, you may not get flowers because they sometimes flower every other year, or they just flower when they want to. So enjoy your flowers when you get them, because you may not get another one for a little while. And then pay attention to where that flower came from. Never trim that flower branch, because they tend to re-bloom from that same area. So leave that there so that you can try to hopefully get flowers the next year. I wanted to show you, this is Hoya wayetii. This is a variegated version. And this is kentiana. And when you don't have them right next to each other in a greenhouse, they're really hard to tell apart. So I wanted to show you so that you have a cheat sheet. So when you see them in a greenhouse on their own, or you're looking at them online, you know what you're looking at. So the wayetii have a little bit flatter of a leaf, a little bit shorter of a leaf, and a little bit wider leaf. Whereas the kentiana has a much longer, skinnier leaf, sort of like a boat shape or a string bean, and it's a little bit thicker. This one also comes in a variegated variety. This is Hoya carnosa Chelsea. I love this one. It's got a nice spoon-shaped leaf. Oftentimes when you look at a Hoya, the leaf shape and thickness can tell you a lot about its natural growing environment. One that's got a darker color leaf that's a little bit thicker probably came from an area that has less light than one that has a finer leaf, like this retusa. The retusa most likely grew a little bit higher up in the canopy and got a little bit more sun, and also maybe a little bit more water in that environment, because this is definitely going to be a much thirstier plant than the Chelsea. Because its leaves are so fine, it doesn't have the ability to store as much water in its leaves. Hoya, as with all houseplants, are susceptible to greenhouse pests. It is always a good idea to scout your houseplant collection for pests. They can seemingly pop out of the air. You can either bring home a plant that you looked at before you brought it in, but you didn't see that one pest, or they can travel into your home on your pet's fur or off of your clothing, or they could be outside and get them from the environment. So it's always a good idea to scout for pests every 2 weeks. Hoya are susceptible to primarily mealybug and aphids. And the best way to treat either of those is to, first of all, just take them outside and spray them off with a nice fine spray of water and knock as many of those bugs off before you ever get to a chemical. That can take care of the aphids completely. Aphids tend to grow on the tender tips of the plant, so any new growth area is where you're going to look for aphids, either on the stem or on the fine new young leaves. They like young tender leaves and young tender stems. And then the mealybugs are going to be hanging out either right where the leaf has come off of the branch, they like these crevices, or in the rope vine, they're going to be hiding sneakily inside of these crinkled leaves. With the mealybug, if you just touch a mealybug with a little rubbing alcohol, that kills them instantly. So you can use a Q-tip soaked in rubbing alcohol and just carefully remove all those mealybugs, and then they should be gone. When you are treating a greenhouse pest, it's always a good idea to treat the plant you see, keep it separated from your other plants, and check it again in a few days, see if there's any more pests, get rid of them again, and make sure that you do not reintegrate it into the rest of your collection until you're sure it does not have any pests. There you have it, Hoya. Great, versatile, easy houseplant that we love. I really enjoy making these videos for you. Leave me a comment, let me know what else you'd like to see, and I'll see you next time.